Welcome to the Inspection Empire Builder podcast. On today's episode, we're talking all things solar. You do not want to miss this episode. Well, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you tuned in today. On today's episode, we're talking about solar panels. We're talking about evaluating those solar panels and what does that look like in a home inspection world. Today, I have with us Cory. Hey, Cory, how you doing, my man?
Oh, doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, Matt. Glad to be here.
Man, I'm so glad that you're here too. We actually met at the Unite conference this past year, at the IEB Unite conference last year, and what you're doing in the solar panel industry and how it connects with the real estate transaction. I was just blown away by what you're doing. And I thought, man, I got to get you on the show. We got to talk about this and make sure we get your message out there so that people understand what Sprk does and what you do and how everything works together. Man, so I'm just really glad you're here. Yeah,
I appreciate you having me on the show. It's great to be here. And yeah, it is really great because we've been to a few of these events now for home inspectors. We're kind of new in the space of home inspection. We've been in the real estate space for a little while now. But it's funny, I had several people actually at that IEB event. They came up there like, after I talked to them, I had no idea. I thought maybe you were like selling or installing solar or something. This is cool that you're doing this because, almost no one out there in the inspection space is looking at solar panels, while they're doing a home inspection. So it's great to be here. And I'm happy to talk about this, but it's fun to also be able to like introduce something new to the industry and be kind of that shiny penny right now where we're attracting a lot of attention. It's awesome.
well, absolutely. I mean, as a home inspector, we look at these houses and we get to solar. Well, solar is excluded from the standards of practice for everybody. And so then buyers are asking us about it. People buying houses are like, hey, I got questions about my solar. Realtors, they want to know more. They're trying to learn about solar. As an inspector, we're like, oh, this is a scary area not because we may or may not know about it, but when you step outside of your standard of practice, it opens up liability and it opens up other things. And so it's whenever you get outside of that SOP, for an inspector, it's like liability city. And so a lot of times as an inspector, we're like, okay, where am I safe to talk about this? Where am I not safe to talk about this? All those types of things. And so like, we're all trying to serve the buyer who's buying this property. And so, and like buyers have questions. I mean, what are some of the things you see, like concerns that buyers have when they're buying a house with solar on it?
Well, to be honest with you, even as a solar guy, I've been doing this for like 12 years, solar for 12 years now, and the installation side of things and sales and operations. And, if I were to go back 5 years before all of this started, when we started interacting on the real estate side, I would have said, listen, solar's going to last for a really long time and probably doesn't even need to be inspected, honestly, because it's like, just lasts so long. It's going to be great. And at the end of the day,
there's no moving parts. It's like,
that's right. It's one of those, It's one of those tools though, that like works and functions and just keeps on plugging along.
Yeah.
And, it's a great product, but it's not infallible. And at the end of the day, like people want some reassurance about functionality and, are there problems, what is happening with this? Because it's one of those products that does its job without making any noise, without, you can't see it, taste it, smell it, hear it, feel it, that you don't know whether, it's doing its job. And so there's a lot of mystery and intrigue around it. And so that's where, people do want to know what's going on with it. And usually the only metric by which people measure its functionality is the seller's bills. Like, well, these are my electricity bills, so it must be good. And, that doesn't always tell the story. And so that's where we got into this on the appraisal aspect of it. That's what led us into Sprk from the solar world, like coming in, like we want to be able to answer the question, what is it worth in the transaction, make sure that that seller can capture that equity. But like time and time again, people always want to know, like, that's great that it's worth, whatever, 20,000, 30,000, whatever that number was, but doesn't work. So that was always the big question. Does it work? Does it work? We're like, I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. We didn't really want to build or have anything to do with the inspection process, but like, was talking to, others before, but we got into this because of need. That was the question that kept on coming up. What's happening there? Sounds like, in the
Right.
inspection world, we get that as well,
Well, for sure, man. I mean, it's like, if my truck is not running right, you can feel it shaking a little, or maybe something's dripping or leaking, or it's making a funny sound, or, something isn't, it's really obvious to go, oh, something's not quite right with this. When we're inspecting an HVAC system, or we're looking at a plumbing, you're like, well, it's not leaking. The water's coming the way it should. Or, the water heater, okay, it's not leaking, and it's, the water's getting to the temperature. There's a lot of metrics as a home inspector we're looking at in the house. But you're right, we got these panels sitting up there, and we're like, is it working? And it's like, well, it doesn't make any sound. There's no moving parts. There's nothing to look at. We're like, well, the conduit is all connected, because that's what we look at. We're like, right. Well, yep, there's panels and they're mounted, and it looks like it's
to be falling off the roof.
Yeah, they're not falling off the roof physically, like, well, it seems like they're solid up there. And then you're like, well, the conduits are connected. There's no breaks in the conduit. And it's like, and it goes down to the box on the side of the house. And you're like, I mean, it's all plugged in. I mean, basically all we have to say is, well, go check the seller's bills and see like what kind of energy it's producing, I guess. I mean, if the seller's bills are $20 a month, it seems like it's probably working right, and versus $200 or $300 a month, and so whatever the connection fee is in your area. And so, yeah, you're right. Like, there's no way for us to really know, like, and a lot of us are like, I don't know, and the sellers, the buyers have questions like, I'm buying this house, I want to know. And it puts a lot of people in a lot of questions they don't really have the answers for, and then realtors are involved too, right? So like, and they're asking the realtors, and everybody wants to help these buyers out, man. But, realtors aren't typically technical type people to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why we have inspectors. Inspectors are a third party, unbiased, that can come in and look at things. Like, we don't have the guy who put the deck up, inspect the deck, and tell you whether the deck's in good shape or not. Then there's a need for that unbiased third party that can come in and collect that information and present it in a way that hopefully does make sense to a buyer, and whether that's any aspect of the home. But when we're looking at the solar, what we found basically was that coming back to that origin of like, yes, we know what it's worth, but what are, we had to like call on basically all the installation experience and whatnot that we had. And so we started going through and like creating a list. Okay, these are the best practices for installation. These are the problems we've seen. And we started inspecting more and more, and we started uncovering all these other little issues that come up that can really end up hurting the condition of the equipment, or equipment aging over time and breaking down. We've basically came up with also an algorithm to measure like how well does the system produce at a certain time of the year, like based off of some electrical measurements, some very simple electrical measurements. Because the key objective when I started out to create this was, how do we walk up to a system without access to the monitoring unit, be able to measure, how effective is this thing? Is this thing working at 100% capacity, 50% capacity, what does that look like? And so it took me about a year and a half to be able to build an algorithm that could demonstrate that. But at the end of the day, we were able to come up with a process that was replicatable to be able to measure that, but using pretty simple means to be able to measure, how well does the system work? How well does it produce energy? What problems does it have? Are there, how long is it going to last? And really like, what red flags should the buyer know about? Because it's one of those things that, like we talked about, like, if you don't know, you don't know. And you can end up inheriting problems you had no idea about. Ignorance is not always bliss.
That is true. Yeah, ignorance is not always bliss. And it's a relatively new technology that's out there, as far as like a plumbing, right? Plumbing's been the same, roughly same technology. I mean, obviously the pipes and the fittings have evolved over time, but ultimately everybody understands, most people understand that like water is flowing through this pipe. This one's the cold, this one's the hot, the drain has to go this way. That technology's been around for many, many, many years. People understand it. Solar is a new technology where people kind of understand it, but they don't really understand it.
Yeah, I think so, they like the idea of it, but like what is the actual functionality of it?
Right. Yeah, like my dad or my grandpa knows how to plumb stuff. And so, grandpa teaches dad teaches me, or however that flows down. And then it's like, okay, well, solar's just It's just a newer thing. And so it's nice to be able to bring peace of mind to people. And so this is the part that's interesting, right? So as a home inspector, right? So like there's a standard of practice for the home inspection. And then anything that's outside of that standard of practice, we create ancillary services for that. And so like a sewer scope is not part of a standard home inspection. And so for us, we have a separate agreement and for the separate service for the sewer scope. And then we have somebody who's certified and trained or licensed or whatever it needs to be in your area to be able to do that sewer scope. And so it's a separate agreement, separate price, separate everything, separate line item all the way down. And we do this ancillary service and we go out and we then run the sewer scope as a separate thing. So same thing with like radon testing or with a WDO termite inspection or whatever it might be, different ancillary services, a pool inspection, things outside of the SOP. So now with what you're doing with Sprk, it allows the home inspector to be able to offer, hey, listen, solar panels are not part of the standard inspection. If you want us to do an in-depth review of these panels, we can. It's an extra fee and it's an extra, contract, extra line item, but we can now produce this report and as an inspector, I don't have to know everything because I send it to you. Is this correct?
Yeah. So
what does that look like?
Yeah. So I think that's a very good summation there, because as a home inspector, I think the goal is to help provide what that buyer is trying to understand about that home. And maybe they only want that bare bones report that's just, what are the four corners of this house? But, when there are concerns about those other items, or someone just really wants to make sure that the biggest investment they're going to make, in their life is going to actually pan out. They want to know like what's going on with these different aspects. And so, the ability to deliver more value as an inspector is always more valuable to a buyer. And so obviously there's other, opportunities to deliver that value. And I think that there's really, some core pieces of knowledge that you really need to be able to understand this. So that's part of what we do, is we help train inspectors in being able to look at those. But in order to provide, I think, someone good, comprehensive information around the solar system, I think there's a few key areas that we've identified to be able to do that. But I think that's the important thing to understand here. It's like any other ancillary service that a home inspector would provide. That's what Sprk does, is we help facilitate and give the ability for that inspector to offer that, knowing that they've got an expert at their back. And so when we actually generate our reports, we generate a solar inspection report in conjunction with the home inspector. So when we generate it, we're generating it from data and photos collected by the home inspector. And so while an inspector is on site, they're able to capture information about the home after we've trained them on that, and then provide a description of problems or challenges that we've trained them on that they should be looking for. And then me and my team, we look at the data, the information, the photos, everything that they've collected. And then we also pull in other data as well that we look at. For example, like what is the local utility charge for electricity there? And who are the local installers? And are they still in business or not? And what is their contact information? And we put all that stuff together in this end report. But we make sure that, because the amount of work it's taken for us to get trained and licensed and certified to be able to install and repair solar, it's just not really feasible for a home inspector to go through that same process. And so having a partner that really one assumes a certain level of the liability of making sure the data is correct, but two, being able to ensure that the data is right. I think is one of the key things that is helpful, is knowing that I'm going to collect this information as an inspector, and then I'm going to send it over to Cory and his team at Sprk. And then they're going to back me up and make sure that what I have input is correct and that the readings that we've taken are accurate. And then being able to then quantify, okay, how well is it working and how long is it going to last? Those are the kind of piece of information that I think are very helpful for an inspector. But as a buyer, that's usually what they want to know. And
right
back to there's probably 4 key areas of a home that are really expensive to replace if it goes out or to put them in. The roof, it's not cheap to swap out your roof. You got an HVAC, air conditioning, heating system. That's not cheesy or cheap to replace. You're talking $10,000 a piece on these. A pool, same thing. It's a lot of money to install. It's a lot of money to fix it. Solar is kind of that 4th big thing that, if you're looking at 4 pillars of a home, that if the home has those items, extremely expensive to install initially. And then really, can really be costly if there is problems that really a buyer should probably avoid assuming those kind of problems without at least knowing that going into the transaction, right? And so that's where I think like having a good broad like understanding around as a buyer, like I'm assuming these things and knowing that there's a challenge, or asking for those to be repaired as a part of the negotiation point. In Arizona we call it a binzer, but obviously all over there's different names for it. But that window for renegotiation I think is really helpful. So it's good to, I think, to have a good understanding of not just like the basic understanding of the house, right, but again, if the buyer wants to know those things, it's really nice to be able to offer that as an ancillary service, because so many do want to know and really ought to, because it is so expensive to install or fix if there is issues.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. And so to make it like really simple, because sometimes I'm a real simply minded guy.
Yeah.
So what would it look like for an inspector in the field? So I have to take some pictures and take some measurements, and then send it to you, which, okay, I'm comfortable with that, because like with mold testing, for example, we're out collecting samples and then we're sending it into a lab, and the lab is doing the analysis and sending us a report, right? So it's kind of similar, right? Like, cause we're going to go out there, we're going to take some photos, collect some data, send it to you. You're going to analyze it and send us back a report. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yeah, exactly right. What it comes down to is just simple data collection, because it is.
So what are the data points? What are the data points we're collecting? What are we collecting? Like, what am I collecting out in the field? What's the data point?
Yeah, so there's 3 different places, like physical locations on the home, that we have an inspector collect the information. But our goal is that, like, make this as simple and fast as possible, not because we want to, an inaccurate or a weak report, but we wanted to ensure that adoption would be high and that, we can keep costs low, because if ancillary services are too expensive, people just opt out of them. And so
correct.
That's something that was really important for us, is that we could provide this in a way that wasn't super expensive for, the inspectors to perform. And so it adds about 15 minutes to a typical home inspection to collect this information.
Okay. 15 minutes on site to take pictures and collect the data.
That's right. Yeah.
That's not bad.
So there's about 25 questions that we ask, and about 20 corresponding photos that we have the inspector take with those. And basically they're taking them in about 3 different spots. So the first is from the front of the house. We want to know, for example, what is the weather that day? And so we have you take a picture of the front of the house, and that includes typically what's going on with the weather. Because, for example, if it's like misty or if it's really overcast, and then we have them take an energy reading with the energy meter that we have them take a clamp on multimeter, and it shows that like the system is producing at this level, right? But it's cloudy. We want to make sure that it's not supposed to be producing here if it was sunny. So we want to know, for example, what's the weather?
Got it.
Yeah, what time of day was it collected? That kind of thing. So we ask a few questions like that are unrelated.
Well, that makes sense. It's 3:00 and it's partly sunny. You're able to go, okay, it's not 100% sun, so it's right. But if it's 3:00 and it's perfectly sunny, then you're like, okay, so that means you're going to have a lot of sun.
Reading right here. That's right.
Right.
So we have them take an energy reading, and so it's like, because even there's getting into some complexities, like a solar system that's facing south versus east at 3:00 versus 10 a.m. is going to produce differently. And so depending on the amount of energy and the amount of like data collection that's happening, like from the inspector side, we want to be able to generate a report that's accurate for them. If it's 3:00 and you've got an east facing or a south facing system, right? Or a mix of the two, where some's facing south and some facing east, right? Yeah. We'll expect a different kind of energy output reading. And so when we factor in like what's the amount of cloud cover, or maybe a panel is being shaded at that time, that like it's only like the chimney sweeps across it at the 3:00 hour, and so only a little bit is shaded. So if they've got 10 panels on a house and one of the 10 is being shaded, we're able to then like factor that kind of information in to ensure that we're not showing that a system's only working at 50% capacity or 80% capacity when it's
right. Because if one of the 10 panels are down, like covered in shade, you're like, oh, it's only working at 90% capacity. Well, no, actually, it's just the way this angle of the sun and the shade is.
That's right. We just happen to catch it at that moment. And so
that's actually very detailed. That's incredible.
Yeah. So we get really granular with our analysis. But the questions that was the trick of all this. And it took us 1.5 years to build like the data collection, the analysis, and then the end report, because I didn't want to just be like, all right, go take some pictures and then we'll make sure that like we're just slightly telling you that it's not falling off the roof better than what someone could tell you. So
Right.
that's like, so I wanted to be able to bring something to the market that no one else could. And so, we train. So we have a whole like certification training process that we put you through where we will teach you that. So
That's cool.
technically after you're done with my training, you could go do a visual inspection without me just fine. But the thing that we bring to the table every time is this deep analysis of productivity that really like shows, okay, how well is this system producing versus how well should it be producing? And we do that in a single reading, and it doesn't matter what time of day you take it in, what day of the year, and almost any weather condition. You got more than 4 inches of snow on your solar, like you're kind of out of luck. It's not.
Yeah. Right. You can't. Yeah. That makes sense.
Past that though, so there's almost no condition that we can't like surmise what is healthy productivity based off of that. And so
that's amazing.
That's like why it was so difficult to build it. And but that's like what energy monitoring does, right? So with you're monitoring your system and it's showing that, it doesn't always like factor all that stuff in, but we wanted to be able to like, again, deliver something of value that wouldn't have the inspector having to keep going back to the property like, well, we didn't quite get that just right reading. It's like, okay,
right.
We had to factor in all these different little things that can come up. And it, to be honest with you, we're not perfect. There's little glitches here and there, and it's like, oh, we got to factor that in. So we continue to work on improving the model. But it's interesting how I feel like it was like, I'm a person of faith. I feel like a lot of it was really inspired to be able to come up with like, what does it need? To be able to demonstrate this, but it's definitely given us the ability to provide not just like an analysis of like, how long is it going to last? Was installed on this date? It's going to die on this date. That's pretty easy to do. But to be able to demonstrate, what level of productivity is happening. So that's kind of like the secret sauce, if you will, that we're like bringing to the table with each one of the reports that we generate. But that's something that our team looks at every single inspection that comes in to make sure that the report that goes back out, we actually call them a certificate because we're certifying that. And so we give all of our inspectors an agreement that shows that we're certifying that the data is accurate and that they're getting a report that's certified by us as solar experts.
See, that's really, really stinking cool. And you said this like earlier, like you want to bring value to this thing. And I think the more value you bring in whatever industry, whatever business you're in, the more value you bring, the more money you're going to make. And I've said this a bunch in other episodes, but like if you're chasing the fruit of your business, you'll be chasing for a long time. But if you learn how to feed the root of your business, then all of a sudden you're going to have all the fruit in the world that you want. So if you're chasing money, that's an elusive thing you're always chasing. But if you learn how to feed the root, then you'll have all the money that you want. Money chases you, right? You don't chase money, money chases you. And so in this case, providing value at that level is feeding the roots of your tree. And if you focus on providing value, feed the root, you'll have money coming anyways. And I know this, you said this offline, but I think even at IEB, we're talking about the financials, and I don't want to get into the depths of that, but I do know this is a pretty high margin ancillary that you can add to your arsenal, where it's like, I can provide a high value thing to high value analysis of the solar system to my client. And it helps answer the home buyer's questions. It gives the realtor enough information. Everybody that's involved gets this great product, and we get it at a good margin. And it's a good ancillary product to add. I got a question though about this. How long between me sending you data and getting a report back? Like I know with one of the things we do is one thing that sets us apart, we do same day reports in our business. The one difference is mold, because we got to send the mold samples out. They got to process and send it back. And that takes us, a couple days or something like that. How long does this report take to turn around?
Yeah, we try and have it back within 30 days at least,
Great. Perfect. That totally works for real estate.
Check the lunar cycle, man. We got to make sure all the stars align. No, it's very good question. So for us, we started this. Our objective, my first objective was, okay, how can I have an inspector roll up to a job, do solar inspection first, and us have it get it to him? Because in my ignorance, I didn't know this. I thought every inspector like gives the report, hands it over to him, the homeowner, as soon as they walk away from the home. So that was like my mindset. Okay, we got to do this and turn it within 3 hours, because that's how long an inspector spends at a home.
Wow.
And so that's been our goal, is to, from the time it gets submitted to us, for us to generate it and get it back, usually within 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
We guarantee a 24-hour term on it now, but as long as it's like within fairly normal business hours. So if you're not submitting it on Wednesday on Sunday at midnight, we're probably not going to get to it within 3 hours. But
right, that makes sense. Right. So if one of my guys rolls up. Okay, so one of my guys rolls up. Let's say they got a 9 a.m. inspection. So in my business, the standard day is they have a 9 a.m. inspection and they have a 1 p.m. inspection Monday through Friday. That's the standard schedule. And if that's full, we're operating at 100%. Sometimes we're pushing a little over, we're grabbing extra work that happens after or weekends and stuff. But a standard day for us. So if the guy rolls up and there's a solar inspection, if the first thing he does is take the pictures and grab the data for solar and submit it, then he goes and does everything else. By the time he's ready to actually finish his reports up and send them out, your stuff's probably pretty close.
Yeah. It should be done back to you.
That's really amazing. That's actually impressive that you can turn it that fast. We will probably, if you're guaranteeing 24 hours, I imagine my guys we'd probably tell everybody the solar report comes, within 24 hours, just like we say with the mold, it takes a couple days or whatever. I forget what we turnaround is right now on the mold, but we'd probably, guarantee what you guarantee. But then when it comes out earlier, people are excited.
Right. And that's it. It's like we guarantee 24 hours. We used to tell them, like, listen, we're going to have this to you for sure in 3 hours. But found for sure, we better to overpromise and it's better to under promise and over deliver, so instead
absolutely
of over promise and under deliver. So
you tell me 24 hours and it comes in 3, I'm super happy. You tell me it comes in 3 and it shows up in 24, I'm not happy.
What? These guys are terrible.
I know,
what
right?
Are you doing? So we look at every report. We have staff, and the most complex ones come to me. I look at quite a lot of the reports myself. And so if you got a weird, funky one, it may take 24, because has to come across my desk and I need to go, sometimes I'll have to go do research on it. I'm like, dude, I've never seen this product before. What is it? Let's make sure that it's aligned.
Oh, right.
Yeah. We want to make sure that we're giving something back that makes sense. And, but we also understand too, like there's all these other moving aspects of it, right? So like I jokingly said the 30 days, because I know you've got a 10-day window, right? So we're trying to get that in there. And a lot of times they need that back, because they're going to need to then reach out, and because a lot of times after the fact that, okay, there's a repair needed, which I'll tell you I thought there would be like 1 to 5% of repairs needed, but I found that like serious, significant issues come up on 30% of inspections.
Wow.
Yeah. Like things that the buyer should know about and probably should impact the negotiation.
30%. That's way higher than I thought it would be.
Me too.
Me
too. I was shocked.
Oh yeah. I mean, solar in my mind is set it and forget it, plug it in and let it go. Wow.
And most of the time it's just, there's issues that come up, and they're different issues.
Makes sense.
It's like, there's like I said, like every month I'm like, add that to the list. We found another set of problems, where it's like, we need to make sure that this is, so we have like pre-populated comments, and inspector can go in and populate, and so our comments list continues to grow, and the comments are typically around recommendations based off of problems discovered during the inspection. And so, as we expand, we're doing stuff in Canada now. And so with Canada, there's a different set of problems, and
wow.
So there's different things that we've encountered, and, my solar in my business, I've installed and done solar in about 8 states. And so we've discovered that, across different places. But, the thing that's been, I think, like, again, kind of going back to the other question or comment about the added value, the thing that like we've also found has been most helpful is the way that the inspector talks about the solar with the real estate professional. Because if like you as an inspector, right, you're like, yeah, solar's set and forget it, it's great, should be no problems. If you go tell inspector the solar's great, it's gonna have no issues, they're gonna look at you like you're an idiot, because most agents don't like solar. And
No.
rightfully so, because they're the ones that deal with some real challenges around that.
Yeah.
And those challenges typically have to do with the transaction side of it and the transferring of the contracts. And so we have built a whole bunch of marketing resources that give you guys the ability as inspectors to go out and speak to those challenges that agents have and address solar as like solar's a challenge and there's a lot of problems there. And as an inspector, we can answer a lot of those kinds of challenges. And so we have some solutions for that. So like we have a partnership with Preferred Systems. They're a national CE course group that, you know, we provide a CE course to agents, to our inspector clients that they
that's
can
cool.
teach agents about solar in a 3-hour CE class that could be broken up into, you know, what different ones. So in 48 of the 50 states, that's something that our inspectors can do through that partnership because they're.
Oh, I love that.
And so like being able to provide those kind of solutions is the other side of this, where we started with the reports and the being able to inspect it, but then being able to drive the business side of it as well to be able to attract and grow an inspector's business. So I want to bring that up because that's like, you know, I think that's one of the goals of this, you know, podcast is growing the empire, right? Is like, how do I take my business and grow it? And I think if you can bring something unique to the marketplace, if you can scratch an itch that's not really being scratched, most agents are pretty oblivious around this topic. And they just get through it or they just hate it. And so like being able to actually provide value for them to be able to do their job better, not just again during the actual inspection, but saying, hey, listen, these are the challenges that have come up. And, you know, we use the Sprk material because we just took all the content that we've been writing and building for agents. And we essentially just package that up for you and say, hey, inspector, use this as a tool to go grow your business. That's been really successful for us to grow as a company. We grow as you guys grow. So we just give you all of our good stuff to be able to go use to grow your business.
That's amazing. So I mean, I do that a little bit of that now, some CE courses, some training classes within the real estate community in my market. But for you to have like a prepackaged CE course that I can go through, train on, get ready to go on, and then I can go and present that course to my local real estate market as a CE class. You're right. Like realtors, everybody in the whole industry looks at these solar panels and like, it's a great idea, but like, I don't really know that much about it. But to be able to come in and provide that, now I'm positioning myself as the expert inspector company. My company is the expert inspection company on solar panels in this market. And they all of a sudden are like, oh man, these guys are, you know, they do this solar inspection thing, but I love that, man. That is so cool that you're now giving inspection companies tools to help them grow their business as well. Because you're right, we're trying to all grow our same businesses, and yeah, that's incredible. I love that.
We just tried to approach this from the perspective of like, as a business owner, what do I need? And so we just always ask. That's one of the things that I like asking the question to our clients is, one, what's wrong with our business? You know, what can we improve on? And then two, though, what else do you need as a, you know, as an inspector? And so the number one request was coming back was we need like marketing material, or we need the agreements for this. And so, you know, we've tried to like listen to that, and we're always looking for feedback. Like, man, Cory, I wish we had this, or we need this. And so that's one thing that we really pride ourselves on as a ancillary service for the inspectors, is the ability to not have to go reinvent the wheel around this, because I invented that wheel. And so we want to make sure that you can take all the good stuff that we invented and we've created around this and go leverage that to grow your business. And so that I think is really helpful, because if you don't know how to speak about this, it doesn't hit, you know, it's like, like if you try to go talk about this without some help, people typically are going to think that you're trying to sell solar, or you're, you know, it's like there's that aha, we're like, oh, I get it now. And that's great. But we didn't want everyone to have to go through those growing pains. So that's where we started. And then it was like, okay, what can we really do to lean into this? And that's when we then came up with the CEs and even because the CEs can be broken up into 1 hour, like, you know, just lunch and learns or whatever. So anyway, we've tried to provide resources that just go outside of just showing up to, you know, like I said, just make a little more and provide little extra value at that, you know, one inspection that you're going to do or whatever that has solar.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it, man. Well, Cory, this has been great. Like I've learned a lot about what you're doing, and I think the product and what you have and the service of what you have is going to help a lot of inspection companies to be able to provide better services, solving problems for buyers, and bringing a lot more clarity to stuff. Man, I know for a fact that people are listening to this and they're going to want to know more. Like, how do I get involved? How do I get this into my company? How do I start to be able to provide this service? And it's an ancillary service that can also make you money, which is we're all in business to make money as well. Right. But adding value, right? And so, how if someone's get a hold of you, get more information, what's the best way to do that?
Like you can just come to my house or something.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, you can put your home address out here.
Just see if you can find me. I don't know. Man.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No, come to our website. Our customer facing website. We've also got a place on there for home inspectors. So it's sprkhome.com. I don't know how to spell, so it's just SPRK. There's no A in the Sprk, so sprkhome.com.
Okay.
So sprkhome.com is a great place on there. You click on home inspectors, and then you can get a hold of us there. We've got some content on there. Also, too, I don't do a ton on social. That's one of the things we were talking about offline. Got to do better on. But yeah, come find me on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and message us there. We'd be happy to connect with you. But yeah, we're definitely growing our network of inspectors around the country. Like this is a huge need. There's 5 million solar homes out there.
Yeah,
and there was 350,000 homes that sold last year from solar, and less than 1% got inspected. So wow. This is a huge up and coming service. We're seeing that when inspectors are proposing it to clients in the right way, they're taking like an 80% take rate on it. So most buyers really like the idea when they understand it. And so, as a service of getting started with us, it's pretty easy to get trained. And then we have an app and a software to make it hopefully easy to use. So we'd love to have, more inspectors come and we can see what your your market looks like for solar, and there's some other stuff we can do with you as well. So we're happy to, bring some more inspection companies on board.
That sounds fantastic, man. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And man, I wish you so much success. And I'll tell you what, with my company, I'm coming. I'm signing on. We're going to do this.
Love it. Well, thanks for being on the show, Matt. Grateful to be on here and get to talk about it. I obviously love what we're doing here. So it's always nice to get to be able to share that a little bit more. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Thanks.